Welcome back to Fairy Garden Discoveries. When we build things, they have to work with weight, balance, and strength. Sometimes things bend, sometimes they shift, and sometimes they teach us what to change next. That's how builders learn. The fairies gathered by the stream at the edge of the fairy garden, shifting from foot to foot and peering across the gently moving water. On one side grew berry bushes heavy with fruit. Plump, sweet berries meant for the evening celebration. Their branches bent low, as if already offering themselves up. On the other side stood the music stones, humming softly, ready to be tapped and played once the lanterns were lit. Amelia hovered above the stream, watching the water ripple around stones and roots. In her mind, she counted quietly: berries, music, lanterns, guests, sunset. "We need to move everything across before the light fades," she said, "and hopping with baskets full of berries is not ideal." She glanced at the water again, thoughtful. "We need a bridge," she decided. "One that everyone can use safely." Then her eyes sparkled. "And since it's a celebration," she added, "it should be beautiful too." The fairies clapped and scattered at once, delighted by the idea of building something together. Petals drifted down from nearby flowers, soft as sighs, pink and yellow and pale orange. Silky leaves shimmered in the sun, catching the light like tiny mirrors. "These are perfect!" one fairy cried, piling petals into her arms. "So light, so elegant, so festive." They layered the petals carefully across the stream, overlapping them like a quilt. Some fairies added extra petals, just in case. Others arranged colors into patterns. Amelia smiled as she imagined fairies crossing with baskets of berries and instruments. "It's beautiful," she said, "and it matches the celebration perfectly." Still, she watched the water beneath it move. Nearby, a small human helper stood quietly, observing everything. She held a clipboard nearly as big as her arms, covered in sketches, arrows, and careful notes. She looked from the petals to the stream, to Amelia, who kept glancing toward the sinking sun. "Petals are very soft," the human said kindly. "Do you think they'll hold when everyone starts crossing?" One fairy laughed. "We don't need it forever, just long enough." Another waved a hand. "And it's too pretty to fail." Amelia hesitated for just a moment. "Well," she said hopefully, "let's see what happens." The first fairy stepped onto the bridge. The petals dipped. They wiggled. They sighed as if thinking very hard about it. Then, plop! The bridge folded in on itself and slid straight into the stream. Petals floated everywhere. The fairy splashed into the water, blinking in surprise, wings dripping. "Oh," she said slowly, "that happened very fast." Amelia stared at the water, then at the petals drifting away. "And the sun," she murmured, "is still moving." The fairies groaned all at once. "All that work! We're running out of time. The berries will spoil." One fairy kicked the grass. Another flopped dramatically onto a rock. The human helper wrote something down on her clipboard. "Rushing doesn't usually make structures stronger," she said gently. One fairy sighed. "Then what are we supposed to do?" Amelia took a deep breath and straightened. "Let's stop," she said calmly. "Not quit, just stop. And look." Amelia floated low over the water, studying the soggy remains of the bridge. She picked up a petal and pressed it gently between her fingers. It bent easily, stayed bent. "These didn't hold their shape," she said. "They folded instead of pushing back." She dipped the petal into the stream and watched it drift away. The human nodded. "Soft materials bend. That's not wrong, just different." She tapped her clipboard. "Bridges need to support weight and resist movement." The fairies leaned closer, listening carefully now. Together, they observed the stream more closely than before. Water pushed from below. Weight would press from above. Petals drifted away. Leaves slid downstream. Tiny sticks bumped into rocks and stopped. Amelia pointed. "The water moves." "And time moves too," one fairy added, glancing at the sky. Amelia smiled gently. "But understanding now saves time later." The fairies nodded slowly. "Let's try again," one fairy said, anxious but determined. This time, they added more petals. Higher, wider, prettier. They worked faster now, hearts beating quicker. "It looks amazing," someone said. Amelia opened her mouth to speak. Crash! Down it went again. Even faster than before. Petals splashed everywhere. One fairy stared. "Well," she said, "that definitely didn't fix it." The fairies slumped along the stream's edge, wings drooping and voices quiet. The celebration suddenly felt far away, like something happening in another garden on another day. Petals floated past them in the water, spinning slowly before drifting out of sight. Amelia watched them go. She didn't rush to speak. She let the moment settle. Then she looked again. Really looked. At the soggy petals, at the steady flow of the stream, at the scattered twigs resting calmly along the bank, unmoved by the water. "What if the bridge is trying to tell us something?" Amelia asked gently. One fairy frowned, hugging her knees. "Like, what?" Amelia tilted her head. "What if it's showing us that trying harder isn't the same as trying differently?" The fairies grew still. "And what if," Amelia added softly, "this isn't failure at all? Just information we haven't listened to yet?" The human helper stepped forward, careful not to slip on the damp stones. She lifted her clipboard and turned it around slowly so everyone could see. This time, the fairies leaned in. The drawings were simple. No decorations, no colors. Just lines crossing lines, sticks stacked, braced, anchored. "When engineers build something," the human said, "they think about what holds things up, not just what looks nice." She picked up a twig and tried to bend it between her fingers. It flexed a little, but sprang back. "Petals decorate," she explained. "They're wonderful for color and softness." Then she held up the twig again. But twigs support. They keep their shape under pressure. The fairies stared. "So," one fairy said slowly, "we built the top of a bridge." "But not the bones," another finished. Amelia smiled, not triumphant, just relieved. "That's how learning works," she said. "You notice what's missing." This time, the fairies worked more slowly. They gathered twigs of many kinds, long ones, short ones, thick ones, thin ones. They tested them in their hands, bent them, tapped them against stones. The longest twigs were laid across the stream first, carefully anchored on both sides. The water pushed against them, but they stayed. Smaller twigs were crossed over the top, woven together until the structure felt steady. Only then did the fairies add petals, tucking them gently between the twigs, softening the surface, adding color and joy. "This feels different," one fairy said, pressing down carefully. Amelia nodded. The weight spreads out instead of sinking. The bridge didn't wobble. It waited. The first fairy stepped onto the bridge again. She paused, held her breath. It held. She took another step, then another, still holding. The second fairy followed, then the third. Soon baskets crossed. Music stones followed. The bridge stayed steady beneath them, strong and quiet. Cheers burst out along the stream, loud and relieved. The human helper smiled and checked a box on her clipboard. Stable structure, she said softly. The fairies laughed, some nervously, some proudly. The celebration was back on. Later, Amelia stood at the stream's edge, watching the last petals float past. They weren't wasted, she said gently. They helped us figure out what we needed. The human nodded. Every attempt gives information, she said. That's how engineers learn. One fairy stretched her wings and laughed. And how we learn which shoes don't slip. Another grinned. I think falling in made it easier to listen. Amelia laughed too. Engineering is curious, she said. It asks questions before it gives answers. And sometimes, she added with a smile, it gets a little wet. By the time the lanterns were lit, the bridge stood strong. Twigs beneath, petals above. Beautiful and stable. Fairies crossed back and forth with ease, carrying berries, instruments, and laughter. The stream flowed calmly below, no longer in the way, but still important. Amelia hovered above it all, feeling the quiet pride that comes from learning something real. Failure isn't the end, she said warmly. It's a step. The human smiled and tucked her pencil behind her ear. Good builders don't avoid mistakes, she said. They study them. The fairies crossed the bridge again and again, not just carrying baskets, but carrying understanding. And this time, the bridge held. Remember, bridges don't work on the first try, and neither do most good ideas. Petals are perfect for beauty. Twigs are perfect for strength. Learning happens when we notice what went wrong, change our approach, and try again. That's how engineers grow. That's how everyone grows.